This evening, I have a special guest, and her name is Raychel Kubby Adler, and she has a book called Life in Asymmetry or Asymmetry, and she's going to tell us all about her story tonight.
Asymmetry.
Like I said it, I always say something wrong. Anyway, welcome to Tinseltown, Raychel. Thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having me.
So we're going to get a little housekeeping done here. I just refreshed over on Facebook so I can see that we're live over there. And if you want to go ahead and tell me a little bit about yourself and introduce yourself to our audience, and then I'll do some little Facebook magic while you're talking and we'll get going here.
Okay, well, as Melissa said, my name is Raychel Kubby Adler. I live in Davis, California, so I'm live in Davis and representing the North and the South together. I like it.
Oh, California.
By day, I'm a wellness coach. I work with behavior change, so I help people, particularly people with cancer, try to live the life that they most want to be living and live inside their values and what's most important to them. And that can take many shapes. It can be the foods that they're eating, the amount of sleep they're getting, their job satisfaction, how their relationships are feeling in their lives, how, what they do for exercise and fun. So it can be lots of different things. And I really have been doing that since about 2003. And feel more comfortable calling myself a health educator, but now I'm getting used to calling myself a writer. This is my first book, and hope to be doing more following this. And besides that, I'm a mom of 2 girls. I have a 10-year-old and a 13-year-old who keep me very busy. And I run a conflict management and physical education program at a school here in Davis. It's called Playworks, and get to have lots of fun playing with kids all day and helping.
What age group are they?
Say again?
What age group are those kids?
It's an elementary school.
Oh, fun.
An elementary school. So the program is for 1st, 6th grade. And I train the 4th, 5th, and 6th graders to be peer mentors to the younger kids. And they really run the games with me. And everything's decided by Rochambeau. So it's low conflict, rock, paper, scissors. And we just have a ton of fun.
Awesome. Wow, you're like me. You do a lot. So
and I forgot spin class too. So I teach for 14 years. I've been teaching indoor cycling. Some people think I'm doing weaving. I'm not weaving. I am cycling inside.
Indoors. What's the other thing? Weaving.
Well, so I say I'm a spinning instructor, and people think I'm teaching people how to sew or weave.
Well, I'm pretty sure everyone in LA has figured out the spinning.
Yeah,
I've never done it, but yeah, spinning is pretty popular. That's pretty cool. That's how you stay in shape. That's great.
It's one of the things I love.
That's awesome. So, tell me about your book and how is it that you decided to write this story?
Well, I didn't start out thinking that I was writing a book. I think I started needing a place to sort of process everything that was happening in a, about a 10-year nutshell of my life. But I think it did start out more maybe as some grief work and, therapy in some ways, being self-reflective and trying to, put pencil to paper and kind of sort through some of it. And I started taking some classes. I'd never taken a writing class. I'd always kept a journal and, found that was a nice way for me to express myself. And but I hadn't been formal. And I suddenly realized week after week, I'd go to this class and I noticed that all the stories were kind of linking together. And someone said, you should turn it into a book. And it was kind of an aha moment of, and I think being a health educator, it's often hard to know what's the best delivery for my messaging. And I've worked for the state doing policy level work. I worked in tobacco control for years.
Oh, interesting.
Great. And that's where, we know with public health, that's where big change can happen.
Yeah.
But missed the personal connection. And that was what drove me to do more of the wellness coaching. And then this now, I realize, you know, the power of how much, you know, more I can get myself out. I can only work with people one-on-one, so I can have, you know, a limited number of clients, but with a book, your message can really spread, and it has, and it's just so rewarding to hear, particularly women saying, you know, how they're being helped. So I feel like at 44, I might have found a new voice for myself, which is lovely.
Yes, absolutely. That's great. And, you know, with the book and the notoriety, you could do speaking and even more, touch more people and help them. And what is the subject? I mean, I know what it is, but share with my audience what's happened that the book is mainly about.
Well, the story is particularly about the three generations. So my mom, my sister, and myself. When I was in college, my first year in college, my mom got breast cancer. And when she did, you know, well, of course, we were sorry that she did. She kind of dealt with it as if it was no big deal. Mm. She's an Energizer bunny, and she kind of powered her way through, and she wasn't of an age that was particularly concerning. But it wasn't until 8 months later, my sister, who is 16 years older than me, but we have the same parents and a lot of same. We look the same, we talk the same, we laugh the same. She got breast cancer at 36.
Wow.
And she found it breastfeeding her youngest son, thought she had mastitis, which is a clogged duct, and kind of waited a little while. And when she was diagnosed, you know, she was young, but it was still before they knew a lot about genetic breast cancer. And so no one really asked too many questions. And, you know, I was in college. It's not really the things you think about too much. Mm-hmm. And so we went on doing the things we did with life. And 8 years later, when her cancer returned in her other breast, I was now, you know, newly engaged and in graduate school. And they did know about the gene at that point, and she was tested and found out that she was BRCA2 positive, which is basically a mutation which her body didn't know how to turn off the cancer-producing cells in her body. So basically, it comes at a young age, very aggressive, and so she basically turned her life into a bid for me to get tested myself, because while there was little she could do for me, there was a lot. Or for herself, there's a lot she could do for me. So I don't want to give away too much of the story, but I would say that's the context of where the story starts is with her pleading to me to be tested myself.
We have a very similar situation in our lives, that it's not cancer though. For me, it's liver disease, but my mom and my sister had liver disease. And my sister, who's 13 years older than me, with nobody in between, with the same parents, died of liver disease. And before she did, and my mom as well, before she died, she was just like your sister in that she begged me, you know, get tested, take care of yourself, because it's a genetic issue. My mom's twin sister also died of the same thing, and other members of the family, mostly women. And so, you know, I do know that that's going to be what it is, you know, that's, so I try to take care of myself but also live my life, but it's hard. And so I can relate in a lot of ways to what you went through, what you're going through. What did you decide? Can you share what you decided to do as far as was there any evidence of cancer or just the gene at that point?
At the point that she, you know, first started her pleading, I just wasn't ready to find out any information. I knew the kind of person I am, and I knew what I would probably want to do given that information. And so I hadn't had children yet. I knew I wanted to. I was, you know, just recently married. So I basically spent a good number of years in that high surveillance profile. And when, you know, when you don't know that you have the gene, a lot of times that means it's at high cost, you know, to get the tests that I wanted to get tested, because they didn't have a reason particularly to be looking at me. And I did a lot of fundraising for breast cancer and ran in runs and walks. And it wasn't until my second daughter was born, and I'd nursed her for a little while. And my sister it was very clear that her life wasn't going to be much longer. And it just became very important to me at that point that she know that her legacy would be of my being tested and hopefully doing something about it. So that was when I decided, and I had that golden age of 36 in my head. That was, I don't know if you have this experience, but when you see this happen to your loved ones, I'm kind of a symbolic gal, and that number stuck in my head. And I always said, okay, by the time I'm 36, I'm going to be doing something different. And so that was when I decided to get tested, and I did indeed, no surprise. I also am BRCA2 positive. There's a term for us, and I think it applies to you as well. It's called a previvor. And it means someone who's
never heard that before. I saw your book, Previvor.
It's a great term, and just the idea. It's powerful. It's powerful. And I think it's important to have a name, because I think a lot of people, who call themselves a survivor, we instantly know what that means and the implications of that for them. And I think that in this situation, it can be very lonely, one, and it's a lot to carry, whatever it is, if it's your liver, if it's your breast, your ovaries, MS has a genetic condition. And I think by giving the name of previvor says I am a survivor of a predisposition to something. And it means I'm actively living my life every day to have something different. And I think, I really try to educate people about that, because I think it's important that we understand what it means to live with, knowing you have such a high likelihood of something.
Yeah. If I get through this interview without getting emotional, it'll be really surprising. I didn't realize that it would hit me this hard, but that previvor thing is really strong. And then for me, that number is 50. My sister was diagnosed when she was 50. She was, that's 2 years for me, 2 years from now, and so it's just, I totally get that. Did your sister pass away? Did she pass on?
She did.
And your mother?
I lost my mom, my dad, and my sister in an 8-year period of time. So
me too. Now I know why I was meant to meet you.
Yeah, we were destined. I'm sorry that that's true, but I'm glad. I feel like with all of this, and by sharing our stories, this is how we feel not alone. And, you don't have to carry it all yourself. And, as much as I don't want to be in this club with you, I also am. We're in it together.
Right. We're not alone. And it's important because it does. I rarely tell people, because it's such a bummer. And people hear like, oh my God, you lost your mom and your dad and your sister. And I have a brother, but we're not very close. He was 15. He's older, even older. And, we tried to be close for a while, and that was great. But, it's just not the same for him. It's just different. It's different also because I have that predisposition, and he doesn't. He hasn't had any problems with the liver. He has other problems. But whatever. I, like you, shared my story in a book, and I like you, just try to make the best of the positivity and the life, living in the moment. And I learned those lessons at a young age for me. And then I try to share that. And so I love, that I'm not the only one out there, and that what you're dealing with, I think, is even so much more prevalent. I think that breast cancer and cancer in general is much more relatable, I think, than liver disease. A lot of people are diagnosed with a fatty liver, which is, basically a damaged liver that could get, dangerously worse, and there's no cure for that. So they think, oh, I have a fatty liver, I'm an overweight person, I'm a, whatever. They don't get it, that they can make a change if you make a drastic change in your lifestyle and with eating. Now, is that true with what you have? Are you able to, or do you, with your health and wellness, do you kind of like modify? Because there are things that you can eat that are healthy and regenerate those cells.
Certainly. I mean, I and this is what I coach people around all the time. There's so many levels at which we can be, managing all of our health and well-being. And certainly with breast cancer, with liver disease. I mean, we know alcohol is, you know, a big challenge with breast. With
she didn't say no. She didn't say absolutely no.
It's so
challenge. It's so true.
I tell people, you know, don't drink. It's, you know, we're in the festive season. Don't eat, but moderation and just, I mean, I know with breast cancer, we know a lot of, you know, that eating dairy products is, you know, less beneficial. So trying to watch those things. I mean, I did end up having surgery. I ended up having 7 surgeries. I got a MRSA infection. There's quite a lot of drama in that book there. Didn't go so smoothly, but I still say I would still
read the whole book, and I apologize for that.
No, it's okay. There's time.
You're gonna send me.
Now you will be driven to read it.
I'm so glad about that. I got a download of it, and so I'm just like, I'm on the computer all the time, but for some reason, I'm clicking that.
I'll send you one.
I'll trade.
But you know, I think in anything, you know, eating well, getting exercise, sleep is so big for our health and well-being. And, you know, I don't want to be the person who cut off her breasts and then, you know, get something else because I'm not taking care of myself, you know, heart disease or whatever it might be. So I do try to live as healthy as I can, but also not drive myself crazy. And there are people who, you know, are constantly looking for a cancer culprit and everything. I just think we kind of have to live and enjoy our lives, but also be cognizant of the things that are probably better or worse choices for ourselves and, you know, try our best.
I really love that message that you, you know, when you say moderation, that's it goes both ways. You know, it's really, you need to let yourself live a little bit. And that's what I always told my sister, because she never drank. So for her to have a liver disease, it's kind of like a person who never smoked getting lung disease. You know, she's just like, what? Because you think it's that. Never drank. I, on the other hand, did drink up until I had my kids. And so, you know, and then socially or whatever, casually. But she would say, you shouldn't drink. You should drink. I'm like, but I'm going to get it anyway. So why not just enjoy a little bit of what life has to offer? You know, as I'm trying to keep a balance.
Yeah.
So, you know, but not like go crazy, like, oh, I'm going to die, so I'm just going to, you know, but.
Well, and I talk about this all the time because finding that balance, you know, we used to joke about it, about health or life insurance or going on trips. You know, it's like, you don't want to blow all your money going on trips and then not have any money to retire, you know, because you are going to hopefully live a really long time.
Right.
But you know, when you've seen, you know, so many of my family members died so young, like there's a piece in you that just wants to just live so fully and juicy all the time and do everything I can while I feel great. But then there's the, you know, the hope that this won't happen and you will live longer and you want to be able to, you know, make it through all of those days too. But it's challenging. And I think especially like you, when you've seen it go the other way, to be able to imagine it's going to be different for us. And I really believe you and I have a bright future ahead. But it is it's really challenging. And people who don't have that aspect have a really hard time understanding, making choices from that place. But, you know, my likelihood of breast cancer is 87%. And I saw it twice in my 2 loved ones who I look the most like. So to wrap my head around the fact that's not going to be, I'm not next, when you've grown up always believing you're going to be next, is really hard.
Right. So even though you've had the surgeries and you've done everything you know, medically can at this point, you still have that chance of getting cancer in your breast, or?
Well, no. So not
understanding.
There's so much, it's challenging, even, you know, I think talk about this all the time, and it's challenging. So before having the surgery, I had an 87% likelihood of breast cancer. And I also have a pretty high elevated risk of ovarian cancer. My gene mutation is a 2, which is higher breast cancer, lower ovarian. There are some people with BRCA1 that switch, so they see more ovarian cancer in their family. But when I had my preventative mastectomy, my risk dropped to actually below 2%, which is less than the general population of women. So that is not, so for now in that piece, in a lot of ways, I've really dropped my risk. You know, and I had a pretty aggressive breast surgeon who hopefully got rid of as much breast tissue as she could, which was important to me. But then now I haven't done my ovaries yet. And there's something called it's a prophylactic oophorectomy. And basically you take your ovaries and the tubes and your uterus and get rid of all those lovely lady parts. That's coming. And
that's emotional too. You know,
yeah.
That's emotional too. I have had some of that lady part surgery, and you know, it's just like it's just life changing. It really is. It's really hard to accept. Like, here's an example on a little scale, tiny little scale that maybe a lot of people can relate to. So I'd never broken a bone in my body until I was 40, and I was playing tennis on Mother's Day with my kids, and I fell going for a ball, and I steamrolled over my arm, and I found out the next day, because, you know, it hurt really bad. I had it x-rayed that I had broken my arm, and I thought, I'm broken now. You know, I'm flawed. I went and did it. You know, I had this feeling like everything was changed from that moment. It was like before, you know, breaking a bone, and now after, what's going to be next? And sure enough, you know, it's like this happens. And it's scary when you hit that point. So having a surgery, any surgery, or having any illness, it's like a rude awakening, you know, but it's all in how you handle it, and how you handle it emotionally, but also by processing it and sharing it. I think that's really healthy. I think what you've done is not only healthy for yourself, but to share it in the way that you have, it's to help other people, and carrying on the legacy from that your sister wanted for you. And that's just so important. And that's why you're on Tinseltown Live. I don't know if you quite understand Tinseltown. You're the superstar, and I admire you, and I want you to share your story, because that's the kind of celebrity I want to know. So
that's awesome. I am not Angelina Jolie, although she had the same surgery I did. And, you know, when I was trying to sell my book, that's what everyone kept saying. Oh, memoir, you have to be famous. And I kept thinking, okay, they're waiting for Angelina Jolie. But it's beautiful that she shared her story. She created an opening for a lot of women to talk about this. You know, there are some women who think, oh, you know, she stole the story and now, but I don't believe that. I think, number one, the more we share stories, the less people feel alone. And number two, I am on a very long marathon, but I am running as fast as I can to be part of research and science to make this different. I have 2 daughters.
Right.
There is so much happening for the future. And, you know, in the same way that my mom walked her path and my sister had her choices, I had very different choices than they did. And I really believe that my children and a lot of young women and men, this can happen to men too, that it can be different for them. And so I participate. I'm a research junkie. I'm like part of a bunch of different tests. I get poked and prodded quite regularly, because there's a future without this. And I really want to be a part of that. And if I don't share my story and I don't share what's happened to me, and I, you know, live inside my own little world, then nothing's going to move. And that's why I really appreciate people like you who are helping us share our stories, because that's really, you know, my sister gave me a beautiful, very different legacy than her own. And I live that every day. I live for her. I want to create joy. She lit up a room. I try my you know, hardest to just share all of her beauties and you know, as well as my own, collecting them together. And, you know, we can't do it if we're just in our own little room.
I can't how much we have in common. You mentioned, hold on, I got a little back there. I don't know why. You said that you had your sister's voice, and that I have that too. Like, I have to be careful sometimes, even if I call my sister's husband, you know, if I haven't talked to him for a long time, because I'm sure that I sound like her to him, you know, and her kids. It's kind of weird. And I hear her all the time. So, you know, but it's been a while, but again, we weren't that close, but that's what brought us close towards the end, you know, that caring, that family, you know. I have a theme for every week, Rachel. And this week, I choose them very randomly. Actually, I use an oracle card deck, and I pull the words in advance, and then I just list them out in my calendar. And then every week I share the word, and I talk about that word and make that my focus for the week. And it's very reflective, and it's kind of a neat practice. And so this week it was anchor. And when I went to go write about it and look at it, I didn't have the card. So I didn't have what the focus of that card was. And it was a new word for me as far as to think about, well, how do you focus on anchor? Well, so look it up, you know, the symbolism. Naturally, I know that an anchor is a symbol for faith. And I, you know, work in a religious school. So, you know, we talked about being anchored in faith, but it's biblical, because they say that the anchor is this. Gosh, I just quoted it all day long. The hope is the anchor of your soul. So that's what it is. Yeah. So it's kind of neat. But then I was thinking about how it symbolizes stability, you know, and rootedness. And that's where family for me comes in, because that's the root of, you know, the foundation of my life and of my family, my kids, and that legacy. But then I looked up anchors away, because that's the theme. That's what I think of anchors. I think of anchors away. And what does that mean? And anchors away is when that anchor is being lifted, ready to go on a trip and ready to move. And so, you know, I've thought a lot about how you can be rooted with your family, but you can also be ready to merge and go forward and try new things, even if you are anchored. So, you know, it's, I don't know why I thought I'd share that with you, because I think that's, you know, I hear you say that too. You're like, you're in charge of where you're going next. And you don't have to live the same, you know, exact things that happened to your sister and your mother. And neither do I. You know, it's our own life. But we happen to have this knowledge. It's heavy, but it's a gift in a way. It really is.
Yeah, well, and I think you can't have a chance to do it any differently, you know, without it. And so I think that, as you said, it's what you choose to do with any of it. And I love that imagery, because I think you're carrying the anchor with you, even as you're going to your next paths. And, you know, we're blessed to have that foundation, those of us who do. And, you know, most of the people I work with, that's usually where we start, is like, what is your network and what is your social network? Not talking Facebook and Instagram, but actual, who are your people, and what is at the core of what's important to you? And usually it does go to people's closest loved ones. And, you know, if we move from that place, you know, I want to be alive and vibrant so that I can play with my kids, so that I can be part of, you know, I can see them find their true love. And, you know, I mean, all of these kinds of things, if we can know what that base is for ourselves and feel solid in that base, it gives us, you know, basically gives you your wings to fly. And I'm blessed. I mean, I would do anything in the world to have my sister back. She was my best friend. Aww. And I miss her, you know, so very much. But by the same token, I don't think I could be where I am right now if everything hadn't happened to her the way that it did.
And that's the thing about health and wellness and life balance. I guess I'm a life coach, so I think a lot about how you cannot change the past. You can't change what happened. You can only live right in front of you, what's happening right now, and plan a little bit to the future. You know, you can have a vision where you want to be and go for that. But other than that, it's just, you know, why try to slice it all up and figure it all out, you know, because you can't change what happened. I mean, to learn for you, like in your case, in research and stuff, and I did a lot of research too. When my mom actually had it twice because she had the transplant, but then she died of that. So the transplant extended her life 13 years. So I went through it in my 20s and then again in my 30s with my mom. So, yeah, and then with my sister. My sister wasn't like your sister, though. My sister kind of, she went for the transplant, and it didn't work out twice. She went in thinking she was going to get the liver and came out, and it wasn't a viable liver. And then she decided she wasn't going to be sick anymore and that she didn't have it. And so she just really kind of stopped caring for herself. And it was pretty soon after that she died of sepsis. Yeah. So like she just kind of gave up. She, you know, was in denial. And so that's that attitude where it's a choice. It's a choice to be happy. It's a choice to think positive. It's a choice to be proactive. No one says you have to take that choice. You could wither away and die, but we have a fighting spirit, so we're not going to do that.
Yeah. Well, and you know, I have things, as it sounds that you do too, that I want to live for and things I want to do. And, you know, I mean, none of us knows. We could have our end tomorrow. But if I'm living my today the way I want to be living my today, then whatever comes tomorrow will come. And
that's what my mom always said. That's what my mom always said. Up to the last, she would say, "You could go first."
Oh, great! I don't know. That's not what I'm saying.
Well, she would say, "You know why?" Because I was trying to help her through those last final weeks, and she didn't understand what hospice was, and I'd explain it to her, and she was so upset. She's like, "What?" She's like, "No, you could go outside, and something could happen, and you could go first." And so I think that really changed how I thought about life. Really, you know. She had a fighting spirit too. She was great. She was the Bionic Woman. She had every kind of surgery from cornea to liver transplant, you know. So anyhow, it's so neat to talk to you. So tell me how we can get your book. What can how can we learn?
There are many ways. The best way is to go to RaychelKubbyAdler.com and buy it from me. I have a brilliant webmaster who's in Oregon. There's no sales tax. And I can mail it medium mail, so it actually costs less than on Amazon.
Excellent.
You can go there too, but being self-published, it's a beautiful thing to go straight to the author. So that's just a word to your listeners, which it sounds like you have a book, which I'm curious. Now I want to ask you questions. But yeah, the best thing people can do is go to my website. And I also on Facebook, my RaychelKubbyAdler.writer is my writing page, and have blog posts there and more information. But yeah, I just love getting the story out. So any way that I can is great. And particularly, this condition is particularly high in Ashkenazi Jewish women. And so that's a population that I'm really trying to target. But they are just scratching the surface of what they know about genetic breast cancer. There's actually a large population in Los Angeles of Hispanic women. There's a cancer cluster that they were trying to attribute to the place where they were living. But then they actually realized it was the genetic form of breast cancer. And it was due to, and I'm sorry, I apologize, I don't have all the data about this. People could look it up, but it was actually about where they had all emigrated from.
Interesting.
It was not where they were living, but they happened to come and all, be drawn to this one area of Los Angeles. And so, as cancer clusters work, people tend to look at the environment because, 80 to 90% of breast cancer is environmental. And so, but then they realized, oh, wow, this is a different form. And I don't know the iteration of that genetic mutation, but it's just, I think this is where our health and medical world is going. And I think we're going to know so much more, exponentially fast comparatively.
Life goes by really fast. You see it, once you're a parent, your children, I'm coming up on my 25th wedding anniversary. I just can't believe it. We had our 30th high school reunion, and, those big milestones, it's so hard to believe. But if thinking back, when I had my third child, I had cervical dysplasia, which is kind of pre-cancerous cells on my cervix. And then after I gave birth, they weren't able to test me while I was pregnant, which is when it was diagnosed. So I had to wait till after I gave birth. So that whole pregnancy, I'm thinking I'm never going to live to see this child grow. I just had the worst things in my mind. And so I had surgery. I'm fine. I'm clear and everything. But I would once in a while get contacted for tests for people in my area where I lived for the cancer cluster, exactly what you're talking about. And so much time has gone by. My son just turned 17. So that much time has gone by. I hadn't really thought about that. But you brought that back to mind, and that, you know, it's so important to share our stories so that they could do more research, whether even if they're barking, oh my gosh, that woman told me not to use talcum powder, not to use, you know, deodorant, all these things, because those were the things that they were testing. But when she sat and asked me all these questions, and I filled out these surveys and stuff, and, you know, that's the most I did. I didn't get really tested and prodded, but I did answer all the questions.
Well, that's important, right? I mean, yeah. That's what they were needing, and I'm guessing that they, you know, something at this point in time has come of that too.
I hope so, you know, and it is definitely, well, for me it was probably HPV, which we found out later after that, you know, probably due to a lot of this testing, you know, that causes that cervical dysplasia. And I think a lot of times, well, I don't know how you feel about this because of what you're going through, and correct me if I'm wrong or if I'm barking up the wrong tree, but I think a lot of things get diagnosed when new tests come out that might have already existed, but we're finding out because their tests are coming out and people are getting tested. And so now it seems like it's more prevalent.
Yeah.
So at the time, you know, they probably had some new scope or something. So everybody was getting cervical dysplasia, which was probably there the whole time, but it's a good thing, right?
Is a good thing, and that's why, I mean, that's what this message is, you know, that knowledge can be power, and, you know, for me it certainly has been. And, you know, I think that that there are many negative parts of Western medicine. There's also incredibly positive parts of it, and, you know, I think that this kind of stuff is that where people can, you know, we can live so much longer, we can live in such a better way, healthy way. And, you know, sometimes people say, oh, you have so much testing and da, da, da. And I, you know, I do feel like in some ways I feel both blessed that I am being watched so closely. And sometimes, you know, sometimes it's a curse. Like it's a lot of, they just found out a connection to pancreatic cancer with my gene. Now I have a pancreatic MRI, and, you know, sure, I don't love that, but I also feel like, well, if there's something there, they're going to find it. So
well, that's really good. That's that proactive, like, you know, you're managing your health. And that's what I try to advocate is, you know, it's only as good as if I follow up, you know, if that medication's not working, or if that, you know, what reaction I'm having, if I don't go back, or if I don't continue the medication and whatever, it's only as good as what I put into it. And it's like that for everything.
We have to be our own advocates for sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's important for people to remember is, you know, no one else is watching out for you in the same degree as you can watch out for yourself. And it's important.
Right. And especially when we have our sister and our mom in our head and they're telling us to do these things, and you can't actually tell them to go away.
Right.
I carry them with me, and I'm always hearing that going, you know, go to the doctor. But okay, so I'm looking at a little thing of, these are the things that Raychel talks about besides genetic cancer: living a hopeful life. I think we touched on that. Parenting, what's it like to be a parent? You're concerned about your kids, but, you know, everyday life, it's a lot of work with two girls. I have 3 boys, so I know what that's like. It's easier than girls. I think 3 boys probably easier than 2 girls.
I would have no idea what to do with the boy.
Well, hopefully I didn't break them by trying to figure that one out myself. But
I love being a mom, and it's just so, I feel like it's such an honor to get to watch people find themselves and become their own human beings. And, you know, it's the best job. It's the hardest job, but I love having this opportunity to be part of someone's life from the very beginning. It's just so incredible. And my girls are, you know, they're living with this legacy too. And especially as my books come out, everyone asks, you know, have they read it? Do they know? Are you talking to them yet? And it's so much. It's so hard to know the balance between, you know, they're not ready to do anything about it. But, you know, I certainly wake up every morning knowing that it's a possibility, you know, that I've passed this along. And it's, you know, it's sometimes it can just be devastating, but at other times I really do believe it's going to be something different for them. And, you know, in the way I had 16 years between what we knew when my sister was diagnosed and what we knew by the time I found out. And then I think about them and, you know, the general conversation is to wait till they're at least 18 partnering, you know, before it would really make a difference. And they're not going to do anything right now. They can't do surveillance. And so we just, you know, eat well, we get exercise, we laugh a lot, we, you know, try to enjoy life and balance the planning for the future and taking some good trips and enjoying ourselves and trying to, you know, live that life.
So what's the answer to that question though? Have they read the book? Do they know? Or are you just
sure my 13-year-old has turned a few of the pages. I don't think she's gone cover to cover yet. The 10-year-old less so. And she was 2. You're going to have to read the book, but there were 7 surgeries, one of which includes a broken bone, or several broken bones. So you'll have to read, but you know, she was 2 in that year that there was quite a bit of trauma. And I think, you know, in a lot of ways when a kid, you know, they carry some of that forward with them. And she's an incredibly empathetic human being. And I think that some of that has to have been, you know, sort of watching her mommy deal with challenge. And, but I don't know that they've officially read it. And I don't know that I'm ready for them to read it yet. There's some big reveals in there that I'm not exactly sure I'm prepared for them to know about.
I actually put some Easter eggs in my book so I'll know when they do read it. And I know that they haven't because they haven't mentioned it. I'm always talking about like about that. Here's a picture of you with your girls. Yeah. That they are so sweet. Look at that. Those are your daughters, right?
Those are my daughters.
Yeah.
That was a while ago. They're well, one's really a teenager now, but yes. I have a large, I like that you called it an Easter egg. I have a large one in my book, which is like my my barometer for if people, you know, they say they've read my book and I know that they haven't gotten halfway if they don't know about something. So those little secrets, I'm like, oh, you've been reading. Okay. Yeah, you want to ask me about? Okay.
I've had that. People will come up and they'll say something like that they know, and I think, oh, you've read my book, haven't you? Because I know I didn't tell you that.
Can you tell me the name of your book and find yours?
If I have one around, I just happen to have one right here. Hold on. Okay. So my book is called "This Is the Sound of My Soul."
Ooh, great title.
Thank you. Thank you. Wow. It's from the song True by Spandau Ballet. And one of my most fun things is because that was a favorite group of mine when I was in high school and through my life. So I got permission from them to use it. So I got to put in my book that this is the sound of my soul, taken from the lyrics of the song True, printed with kind permission of Gary Kemp. Oh. I know. I was like a Spandau Ballet. So that was kind of cool because that's what they told me they wanted me to put in there. I'm like, kind permission. I love that. So what my story as far as why I wrote the book is I started a blog from writing prompts in a program that I was in called A Year with Myself. And it was weekly for 52 weeks of prompts that I would write about. And when I set out to do it and realizing I was going to be sharing all this insight on my blog, which is kind of like a journal blog, I thought, when I'm done, I'd like to maybe make a book of that. But I didn't know how it would go. So anyhow, it went well. I kept thinking about how I was going to write a book, and I took a webinar on how to write your story. And they said, you know, if you're a blogger, if you're a writer, you probably have a book, and so you can start saying that you're the author of the forthcoming book, and you can make this title and all this stuff. Oh, that's interesting. And so they said, once you have 50,000 words, written, you can, you know, make a good sized book from that. So I thought, I wonder how many words I wrote when I did that year with my self-post thing. So I went and I put everything in a Word document so it would count. I had like 70,000 words.
Awesome.
So I just set a time. What?
I think mine's like 72.
Yeah.
So right in that perfect zone.
Yeah, just in that zone. And so I thought, well, okay, so now I've got the body of work. All I really need to do is mold it into something that you can read from cover to cover. And it's really blog posts, so you can just kind of pick it up and start anywhere. But if you read the whole thing, it's a transformation story of how, you know, I went through the passing of my sister and my parents, and a lot of other things happened to me around that time. And I had a lot of grief and a heavy heart. And I had these little kids, and I had work, and had all these things. And I just thought, you know, how am I going to get out of this health problems and depression? And I really did a whole transformation where I turned it around, and I started living a mindful life, and became a life coach and a blogger, and, you know, started setting my sights on what I wanted my future to be about and how I wanted to live in between then. And so, you know, it's kind of, that's what it is. Just kind of tells you about me.
Let's trade.
Okay. Gotta sign it.
Yeah, we are kindred souls, most certainly. I'm so glad you found.
Oh, thank you. Well, you know what? I always, my goal this year had been to connect with people and sparkle. That's why everything says sparkle, because I wanted to live, you know, kind of bright and cheerfully. But the connection part is so great. And that's why I do Tinseltown Live. It really, I know a lot of people enjoy watching it, and it's great to have that video, but I kind of do it just so I can meet fantastic people like you and be inspired. So what are some parting thoughts? It's been an hour almost, and I know you have to have dinner, so do I. But what are some parting thoughts? And if you have maybe like what your core value is, how would you say is how do you want to be remembered? What was your mission?
I mean, I think the word that you said before is the word I carry with me all the time, and it's hope. And I think, you know, I believe I was blessed with an incredible amount at birth of, you know, resilience and a real hopeful spirit. And it has served me incredibly well, because life is challenging. Mm-hmm. And I see how it is for people that don't have that reserve. It's a lot harder. I sort of say there are people who kind of go through kicking and screaming, and then there are people who are just naturally able to kind of roll into that flow space. And I'm so thankful that I think I fall towards the latter. I think it makes this life of crazy ride just a little bit more beautiful. But that's what I also try and share with other people is, like, you know, that can also be built. Like, even if you didn't have that naturally, we can juice those muscles. We can learn how to appreciate what we've got. And you don't have to go through terrible things to be able to access that. And unfortunately, a lot of people don't come to that until something bad has happened. And so I think, you know, that's by sharing my story, by showing that we can take life's challenges, they're going to come at us, but we can decide how we want to do this, and how we want to live, and how we want to shine out towards other people. And, you know, I just think if I can, you know, model that even for one person and have them feel less alone, and have them feel more hopeful, and just really believe that that's what our journey is here on earth. There's not really much more than what we're given each day and what we do with it. And, you know, that's my little mission, is just crunching, you know, chipping away at that, you know, the parts about life that can turn people hard, and try and say, there's so much sparkle, there's so much beautiful. But you have to be willing to look for it, and you have to be willing to, you know, make choices that aren't always the easiest choice. But I think, you know, if you're going from what's valuable and meaningful to you, you're going to find, you know, just a lot of rewards. And the people that come into your life because of that, and the, you know, the opportunities that open up, it all kind of goes together.
Yeah. Wow. Thank you so much, Raychel. I feel like I've learned so much from you, and being able to share that, it's a big, you know, it's a weight lifted whenever I get to, you know, connect with someone who understands. So thank you so much for giving that to me. And and for being here on Tinseltown Live. I really appreciate it.
I can't wait. Now I'm just going to be addicted to your show.
Well, since
you do all the time, who's next?
Next, I'm actually quite excited. Next week, I have 2 interviews on Tuesday and Wednesday, and they're both with men. So we've had a lot of women authors on the show recently, all the last 4 or 5 weeks. So I have Charles Hanna. Now, Charles Hanna, oh, it's way up on the top of my shelf. Charles Hanna wrote the book Higher, and it literally is talking about his struggle with addiction and changing his life and finding his meaning in life by hitting rock bottom and then becoming successful again. So I think that's really a great timing to talk about that. At the end of the year, he does a lot of, Charles Hanna does a lot of ministry and talking about reshaping your life and finding peace. So, and then on Wednesday, I have Karu, and he wrote his books right here. And Karu Pepritz. I'm really looking forward to meeting him. Now, he sounds like a character. I haven't seen him or heard him yet, but it was actually like a not country western, a cowboy actor. Huh. So yeah, so like he's got like you might recognize him. Let's see this picture on here. You know, kind of just looks like your average cowboy, right? You know, like you've seen him before. Yeah. But he has this book called The Legacy Letters, where he writes about how to write letters that are meaningful. So we're actually going to be talking about letters to Santa Claus. So it should be fun. It's going to be interesting, but it's deep. It's deep. He's got a story I can't wait to uncover. I love to discover, like that's part of the reason why I don't read the full book before I talk to someone. Because for me, I like to discover people when I meet them. Yeah. And all that came out of that conversation, would it have come out the same way if I had read it first? Mm. You know, it's really
been asking me about my Easter egg.
Yeah. See, I might have, you know, spoiler alert or whatever, but you know, and we could have maybe like pinpointed just one thing, but instead we talk about you and me and life and everybody. So for me, I love that. So hopefully, you know, hopefully you'll enjoy seeing the next 2 interviews with Charles Hanna and Karu Pepritz.
Awesome.
And in my head, I say Karu because he phonetically, I think it's that. I don't know. I'm terrible with names. Better with faces. All right. Well, anyway, thanks for having your face here with me, and have a wonderful night.
Thank you. You too.
We have a friend for life now. Thank you so much.
Be well.
Good night. Be well. I love that. Good night. And I'm going to turn off Facebook. So goodbye, everybody on Facebook. We'll see you next week. And